Admiral, radar shows that we have liberals approaching at 3 o'clock, and libertarians at 9 o'clock, and conservatives at 6 o'clock. They're coming from every angle, every viewpoint. Oh, it's Political Radar with your hosts, Rhonda and Elliot.
Hey, all you political junkies, welcome to Political Radar, the best unscripted, uncensored 30 minutes of political talk you will hear all day. This is episode 18. We're actually on some sort of a marathon.
Little bit of a marathon.
Little bit of a marathon.
I don't know how to speak British. I was going to try, but I failed.
And our guest today is...
Poppycock. That's all I know.
Our guest today is Phil Jennerjahn. Phil was... he ran against me for city council in District 4 this past spring election. Thanks for coming in, Phil.
Well, it's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I knew there was something that I liked about you. I couldn't really put my finger on it.
It must be the T-shirt.
You're holding her accountable.
So you can't see this,
you.
but Phil has a Ted Cruz, what does it say?
Courageous conservatives
Actually,
for Cruz.
through the magic of the internet, I will take my phone will beep because it doesn't honor my vote.
So you're a Cruz fan?
Yeah, I was a Cruz supporter.
So how do you feel right now?
Dejected.
What's your plan? You voting for Trump?
Probably not. I mean, I don't, there's a lot of problems with Donald Trump. He's not a conservative. He changes his mind every 5 minutes. I'm not sure I can trust the guy to turn my back on him for 5 seconds. He may be the Republican nominee. It doesn't mean that he's a good candidate or a good choice.
You going to write someone in? You going to write Ted Cruz in?
What?
No, there's no point in that. It would be kind of like a couple of years ago when I was living in California. The Republicans put up a horrible candidate named Meg Whitman, who was, the eBay CEO, and she had no background in politics, but she immediately wants to jump to be governor of California. And because she had a lot of money in the bank, the Republican Party all kind of
and she had a successful business and
fawned and fell at her feet and said, "Oh yes, she's the one." And yeah, because she could spend a lot of money, and she did spend over $100 million on her campaign. But she lost quite convincingly because she was a phony, and it got exposed during a campaign. Like, gee, she didn't vote for like 20 years. Oh, she had an illegal immigrant maid who she fired like 3 weeks before the election because she didn't want people to find out. So it was a disaster. So I think Trump has all types of skeletons in his closet, most likely. But it's kind of shocking. I mean, it's he goes on air and he just says things that blows people's minds, and it doesn't seem to damage him.
If you would have just gone on and said you're fired, and said I'm a businessman, everybody knows me, I know how to get things done, and left it at that. This is why I don't run for president, because I say things sometimes that I shouldn't say, and he does this every word he says. The guy's crazy.
Well, I wouldn't say he's crazy, but I mean, he's a businessman. He's out there to make money and stuff like that. And sometimes business people have to be a little bit ruthless. The things that bother me about him is his lack of a coherent ideology. People ask him questions. Do you support this? How do you feel about this? And he kind of wanders around in his answer.
So why is he winning? But he's winning. So why is he winning? As a conservative, that is who you are faced to vote for. Why is he winning? And why do you think he's at the top of every poll? He's won, a large majority of the votes. Why do you think it's happening?
He's winning for several simple reasons. Now, most political leaders in America are, kind of like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who get up there and speak in front of a microphone. They tend to be polite and say things that, people kind of want to hear, but they're not too aggressive towards others.
I thought his name was Little Marco.
Yeah, well, that's Trump. That's another part of his winning strategy, is he slammed people with these, derisive monikers, and they seem to stick. Lying Ted, corrupt Hillary. He's like, he's impolite. He's brash. He's a big mouth. I think part of the reason he's winning is because, one, part of an election is trying to get your name out there. And he's been famous in America for more than 30 years. I mean, he was writing books back in the 80s, being on the front page of the newspaper, on Newsweek, Time Magazine. And, he was famous before the Clintons ever got into the game. Like, nobody knew who the Clintons were back in, 85. And Trump was famous back then. And, part of the struggle was people looked at a ballot and said, gee, I don't really know this Mike Huckabee guy, or Ted Cruz isn't really that famous either. But, they said, I know who Donald Trump is. And also some of his stances, he was very strong, speaking out against immigration, saying, I'm going to ban Muslims, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's way more the fear tactics than the name recognition, because people are voting in a primary. They're not voting on names.
Well, part of it is name recognition. Part of it is his strong stance against immigration, and also his kind of like generic platitudes about make America great again and rah rah and stuff like that, without offering any real specifics. They say, well, how will you fix this? And he talks in circles. I'm going to solve it. It's going to be great.
So you don't like him. So
No, I
my
don't.
question to you is, you don't like him. You don't want to vote for him. What are you going to do? Are you not going to vote?
Probably like with the Meg Whitman situation. I mean, this was a woman who asked for my support, but she didn't even bother to go vote in any election. So when other Republicans were running California, she didn't support them. So, Trump was giving money to Democrats a few years back, some really awful people too. And he wants my support? I don't think so. I think most likely I'll just look at the ballot and leave it blank because not going to vote for Hillary. God, no.
You're not going to leave it blank. There's a little mark there that you can put by Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson, I don't think so.
Really?
No.
You wouldn't write in Ted Cruz? What do you think about write-in? Because there's a lot of conversation about write in this candidate, because this candidate, the one that I want, isn't there. So what do you feel about that? Like, do you really think that that's actually a good strategy? Because I'm hearing a lot of that.
Well, I think the whole write-in thing is kind of silly. I mean, if you look at the history of elections, like how many thousands of elections have gone off, how many times has a write-in candidate actually won? Probably pretty much maybe 2 or 3.
So you think that's a stupid strategy?
I just
people shouldn't write in their candidate.
Well, you can if you want, if it's making
board.
if you want to make some moral stance and say I support this person, but if they're not actually going to win the election, you're kind of wasting your own time and the people who have to analyze the ballots and go through and check them.
So the people that are saying, we're going to start this revolution, we're going to send a message by writing in this candidate. How effective is that?
What? Who's saying that?
A ton of
the
people.
Bernie supporters.
Not very. I mean, your effectiveness happens earlier than that in the contest to get on a ballot. Bernie Sanders, even though I think he's an absolute lunatic, he supports communism. His whole campaign is based on hatred and envy, which is ridiculous. But he had a lot of supporters, and he was very passionate.
Hatred and envy. That sounds a lot like Trump.
No, but when I was doing my earlier campaigns for the city and county elections, I was cruising around in the neighborhoods, and I was kind of struck with this horror. I'm like walking in front of these yards, and they have a Bernie sign in the front yard. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, do I even want to knock on his door? These people.
There were
crazy.
like two of those signs, Phil. That's it.
No, there were a lot of them.
No, there were like 2 or 3.
There were several on my street.
There might have been 3, but I walked the same district you did. There was like maybe 2 or 3. There's not as much out there as you realize. And I finally just have started.
There was one supporter down at the end of Port Lear that had like a gigantic thing on his.
Yeah,
on his
but still
porch.
like 2 or 3.
But to that point, that's why a write-in can't work, because there's too much apathy. People don't care. There's not going to be enough on a write-in.
So can we talk about vice president picks? Who we think they're going to pick as far as
Gary Johnson already picked his. So
and who would that be?
Now we're on to your dude.
And who's Gary Johnson?
Gary Johnson's the Libertarian, the only other candidate that's named something other than Trump or Clinton that's going to be in all 50 states on the ballot. So all of our listeners can vote.
So you're gonna be supporting the Libertarian in the election?
I have no choice. Your parties have left me with nothing.
So who do we think that Trump's going to pick for a VP?
Well, there's several options. I think the person he should pick should be Condoleezza Rice. I think she'd be phenomenal. And I think
You think she would say yes?
Well, she probably wouldn't, because it sounds like she's got a professorship at Stanford and she's not interested in
So let's
politics
not talk
anymore.
about who we think. Let's talk about who we feel is probably realistically going to happen.
On his short list. Gingrich is a possibility, but he's such a loose cannon himself. He could almost become a side distraction from the campaign. So I don't think he'll pick Gingrich. I think he's probably going to pick this Jeff Sessions from Alabama, senator from Alabama, because they're just very, very so much ideologically aligned. Like a lot of the stuff that Trump is saying now is stuff that Jeff Sessions was saying 5 years ago and 8 years ago and stuff like ban Muslims and we got to stop immigration and stuff like that. And in fact, one of the staffers that worked in Sessions' office eventually became like one of the big heads of the campaign for Trump. So they kind of share that in common.
But wouldn't you try to actually reach out to someone who, like a demographic that you weren't doing well with? Like women, maybe immigrants. Like why wouldn't you
got to double down on the crazy?
It's not the crazy. I mean, Sessions has been saying the same stuff.
Banning Muslims is crazy.
Oh.
Well, that's one opinion.
That is the opinion of the American people. Freedom bravery, not fear, and envy.
All right,
Well,
so back to the
Did you
VP.
notice after Trump said that though, when he said like we need to ban all Muslim immigration?
People love it.
Yeah, he suddenly
all the
got
crazies.
he got a lot of media coverage.
Yep. When we
He was
kick him out of the country, he should take those people with him.
Okay, so back to the VP pick. So
Mm-hmm.
who do you think realistically he's going to pick?
I think probably Jeff Sessions.
You do. You
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah, I really do.
Do you think that's smart? Why wouldn't he go for somebody?
There's
like,
no tactical advantage in it. I mean, he'll win Alabama overwhelmingly anyway, even without that. But I think Trump is more a type of person. He goes a lot on gut feeling and instinct. You know, like when he makes his speeches, sometimes he says like, "This person he's a very bad guy. This
And that's
is a bad
so
guy."
frightening.
And
It's so frightening.
He goes off on people. But when he agrees with someone, when he gets along well with them, he's like, "Yeah, this is a good guy. This is a guy I
A
can
friend
work
of
with.
mine."
Yeah, he's a friend of mine." Yeah, it's no, I think that's probably going to be the pick because, you know, part of the thing with the VP picks is you have to try to. Sometimes you want to look for a tactical advantage. You do want to do well in a certain state. Maybe this person can help push you over and help you win a state. But the fact is, usually the VP picks don't really make that much a difference.
matter.
Maybe like 1%.
Okay, well, let's talk
or
about
something
Hillary.
like
Who's she going to pick?
that. I'm terrified she might pick Elizabeth Warren, but
It'd be stupid not to.
I think she's probably going to play this. You know, thing is about Hillary, to me, she's less frightening than Obama. 'Cause she's more of a pragmatist. Like she's got some crazy ideologies, but she's also
You're going
like
to
her
vote
husband.
for her, aren't you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, she loves drone strikes. You got to get into that. Republicans love drone
No,
strikes.
but she's kind of a pragmatist. She's kind of like her husband. Like they try to get away with like, you know, some like crazy liberal program stuff, but then when they get some backlash, they're like, okay, forget it. We won't do it. So I don't think she would have been, you know, if she would have beaten Obama in 2008, I don't think she would have been nearly as destructive. I don't think she would have approved as many, you know, kind of like nutty things that he's done. People, you know, Republicans are getting all afraid, you know, like, oh, if Hillary wins, it's the end of the country. It's the end of the world. I'm like, no, she'll be, you know, she would probably be a bad leader and make some bad decisions, but I don't think it would be the end
I
of the
hear
world.
a lot of conservatives say exactly what you're saying right now.
What? That she's...
They're getting ready for her to win,
Right, exactly.
which
And
is why they might as well vote Libertarian.
Well, she might, you know, she could win. I don't deny that, but she could also lose.
But you
I mean,
sound like you might be okay with that.
Not really.
But you wouldn't hate
I don't,
that.
I don't want her to win, but the fact is, you know, demographically and statistically, like the Democrats have a bit of an advantage because they win these huge states like New York and California, which have, you know, massive number of electoral votes. Those are pretty much in the bank. Like, you know, when I lived in California as a Republican, it didn't matter who I voted for because California was going to go down the tubes anyway, vote for, you know, whoever, Obama or whatever. It didn't matter. So, you know, it's...
So Elizabeth Warren, I can't talk. Elizabeth Warren
know
will
who you're
be
talking about.
the VP.
I
Pocahontas?
think so.
What?
Yeah.
Pocahontas?
Yeah.
The one who pretended to be
Well,
Native American?
And honestly, why not go all in on that? You know, she can double down on the woman thing, and Warren picks up some of those Bernie voters.
What's the woman thing?
She's a woman.
Oh, that? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Why not do that?
No, but she might pick her because she's actually kind of a good speech maker.
Yeah.
And as at least for her type of voters, she really goes after them, like goes for the jugular. Like I was watching this thing on you know the internet today about she's just bashing on Trump and saying like he just wants to get rich and drive you into the dirt. I'm like,
And that's the only place
you know,
VPs matter.
in her
Being able to do that.
fantasy world, you know, like basically she thinks she's George Bailey, and you know,
I don't know. I don't
she
think
thinks
they're gonna
Donald
do
Trump is
that.
Mr. Potter. You know, he'll
don't
have you all in Trumpville. He'll have you living on dirt.
I don't think
you
they're
know.
going to pick her. I think they're going to try to have someone softer.
Maybe I actually think she's going to pick Tim Kaine, the guy from Virginia, just because he seems somewhat inoffensive. People in the Democratic Party like him. He seems, you know, reasonably prepared for the job in case, you know, something should happen.
And I wanted her to pick Julian Castro. That's who I'd like her to pick.
I think he's a name on the list, but I don't think she'll pick him just because he's younger and doesn't have quite as much experience as some of the other people.
She needs those younger voters, though. She needs Bernie's younger voters.
Well,
That's why she's going to do
Is
that.
she going to get the Bernie voters? That's the question.
She could probably have a good start if she picked Julian Castro.
Well, I heard a lot of Bernie voters say that they don't like Hillary and they don't plan on voting for her.
Julian-
Not that they're going to vote for Trump. but they
Julian might help.
Oh, they'll vote for Gary Johnson. And I know that that the people in the major two parties scoff at that, but I'm telling you that this is going to be the best third party showing that we've had. That doesn't mean he's going to win, but he's going to be a spoiler, and that means Hillary's going to win. But it really that depends on how many of Bernie's supporters he gets.
You're probably
wouldn't
right
say-
about
I wouldn't
that.
say that absolutely. You know, Trump could win. I mean, it's not, you know, Republicans said he couldn't win the primaries, but look where we are now.
So one of the biggest issues that I guess, of the day.
I think we should make a public bet.
Let's not do that.
What? Why?
No.
All right.
Okay,
You want to make a bet?
Yeah.
$50?
Not cash.
I'll take Trump, and you say Hillary's going to win.
You know what? If we're going to do that, it should be a charity thing.
Oh, charity thing. Okay. Donation $50 to charity of your choice.
You make more money than I do. So how about 50 hours of volunteering for?
No, wait, 50 hours. Forget that.
That's 1 hour a week for a year. You can
Yeah,
do that.
but,
You can do that.
No, my job sends me out of state all the time.
You don't like regulation. How are we going to track that?
Rhonda is going to be our overseer on this.
Overseer.
All right, not 50 hours, 5 hours. 5 hours. You got a whole year to spend it. I get to pick the charity, and we'll do that.
Okay, wait. What's the?
This is why she didn't want us to do it.
No.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You might send me someplace I really don't like. Forget this.
5 hours volunteering for junior achievement. You can do that.
Junior achievement. All right. Now what's the bet though?
That Trump loses.
Trump loses.
Yeah.
All right. 5 hours. I'll take Trump.
Yeah.
You get Hillary.
And then you can pick, and I'll do some whatever. I'm
Okay.
sure it'll be some crazy.
And I'm not getting involved in this. So we're moving on. We're going to talk about Brexit. Let's talk about
Finally.
something pretty major happening in the world, right? And it does affect us in Wisconsin. You realize that.
Why are you looking at me like I don't think it affects me? I love Big Ben. And
Big Ben
British
is the
flag.
fourth largest export they receive Wisconsin.
Well, right now it's
Material.
not affecting anybody at all yet. So
So it's going to take, a couple of years, right, for this to roll out?
I don't know about a couple of years.
It impacted
but-
the stock market. It impacted currency rates. So
Temporarily, these things are always going up and down. I mean, after a week and everyone forgets about it, everything will probably.
Nobody
go back
should
right where
forget
it
about
was.
this, though, because Wisconsin sends over $800 million worth of exports to the UK. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So no one should forget about this. And this is not, this is not something that anyone should
So
forget
you
about.
mentioned that you lived over there.
Yeah, I lived in the UK. I lived in London for about a year, so I know all about the Tories and Labour and stuff like that.
So
And
explain to me, a layperson from Green Bay, Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
how something so crazy can happen. To me, the EU was modeled after the US, and this is like Texas leaving.
It's not really crazy. I mean, it's actually logical. See, years ago when you traveled through Europe, and I did years ago back when they were all separate countries, it was kind of a headache. You had to keep hitting borders and changing your currency. I got to change my Belgian francs into Dutch guilders, and you'd lose money every time. And there were all these, complex, border checks and things like that. And he just decided to kind of copy the United States. And they said, hey, why don't we make Europe all one big super state and everyone can travel and live in each other's countries? And it's like a lot of, liberal ideas. In theory, it sounds really good. And we'll have everyone get with one currency, the euro. But, several of the countries didn't like that. Like Great Britain said, no, because that gives someone else control over your money. And also the Norwegians said, forget it. And the Swiss didn't do it either. But a lot of the countries did, and they had the euro. Like I have friends in Spain. I also lived in Spain for a little while. That when they switched over to the euro, everyone was worried, this isn't going to work. And in fact, initially things were much more expensive for them. But then they started earning their wages in euros, and everything's kind of normalized and equalized. So, a lot of Europeans, they like the idea of moving freely and Swedish people can go live and work in Germany and Germans can go live and work in France. And they like that part of it. But then there's this part with this kind of crazy, kind of UN kind of groupthink government in Brussels where everyone starts, voting we have this crazy law. I mean, I have so many great stories. For example, I have a friend that lives in the Netherlands, Peter and Carol. They live outside of No, I'm sorry. They live in Belgium, just outside of Brussels. And, for example of how overwhelmingly controlling European governments are, Peter, they had this tree in there next to their house that was starting to lean and, was going to cause some damage. And he wanted to cut the tree down. And he went to the city council and when he said, I want to cut this tree down, they said, no, you cannot do that. It is there, it is nature. You have to leave it. And he was like,
What kind of accent is that?
Belgian.
Okay.
And
You're much better at the accents than I am.
yeah, especially because I lived in UK, mate. So anyway, so he had to wait till one night there was a storm, and he went out and tied a chain to his truck and tied it to the tree when it was thundering and raining. No one was looking. He pulled it down, and he came out in the morning and said, "Oh, it's terrible! What has happened? What has happened to my tree?" So it's ridiculous that you have to do this little dance for government. And there's a lot of that type of overregulation in Europe. That's what goes on over there. And then the British were getting things voted in, and the whole idea of like no borders and everything. The problem was there are some weak countries like Greece that, didn't have the money and finances because they were already bankrupt, that they couldn't control their borders. And then when the war went off in Syria, and they suddenly like a million people came swarming in, and most of them coming through Turkey and Greece, and they just let them go through. And Austria was like kind of like some Keystone Cops thing. Stop, please stop. And everyone's just running through them in swarms down the highway. And, eventually these people are headed for the successful countries like France and Germany and England. And they get there and they start, looking for jobs and causing trouble. And the British people were like, no, we've had enough. We're done with this. We can't trust Greece to protect our border. So they said, we want out. We're done. I mean, eventually they're probably going to come to some type of agreement where they'll still have flexible trade agreements between these countries, but there's going to be limits on you're not going to be able to just walk in here and live here anymore.
So you think this is a good thing? Bottom line, you support that.
For Britain, yeah, I was absolutely supporting it. I said Brexit all the way. It's just like, I also feel the U.S. should get out of the United Nations. But that's my opinion.
So you think there's no repercussions for that?
There will be some repercussions. Some of the European countries will get angry at the UK, and they might say there's some extra tariffs if you're going to trade here or things like that. But I think eventually things will normalize because I think they realize.
Well, they're going to have to do that, otherwise they're at risk of other countries leaving the EU, right?
Well, other countries probably are going to leave. Like right now, already, France and Germany are thinking about it. In fact, one of the big leaders in France, Marie Le Pen, she's the leader of Front National. She's talking about, I agree with the British. She says France for the French, and she wants France to vote.
So American products are going to become more expensive. Why should we support this?
I didn't. Well, you're assuming American products will become more expensive. That's not necessarily true. I mean, the U.S. has trade agreements with the European Union and all the other countries. It's only with England. And England has a very positive relationship with the United States. I don't think they're going to do things to harm that.
But there's fear, uncertainty, and doubts about what's going on, no matter which direction things go. Like if they reverse the Brexit, or we're in this this in between place right now. So everybody's afraid, and they're going to hoard money. When people are afraid, they're not going to spend.
Well, there's fear and uncertainty and doubt at all times. I mean, in fact, I don't know if you guys have spent time in Europe, but they actually follow our politics quite closely. Like you can go into a pub in England, and they'll have CNN on, and they'll be watching and saying,
"Oh yeah, they think we're an absolute joke
speech.
Right now." Europe does.
Well, they're not impressed with our choices. So and some of them think Trump is a madman. They're quite frightened by him.
So anyway, so you don't believe that there'll be any trade issues here as far as like goods being shipped from the United States? This isn't going to cost us anything.
I don't think it's going to be any major change. I think that, if Europe and Britain want our products and are willing to pay for them, we'll still ship them over there and they'll still buy them. I think if we want to buy their products and they want to ship stuff over here, we'll still buy it. There may be some, small percentage change. Like
so with the Donald
you got to tack on an
presidency,
extra 8% now.
With the Donald Trump presidency, knowing how he feels about things, you don't see this as an issue.
Well, I think Trump is kind of he's for what's good for business. I think he'd be kind of a free trader. I think he'd want to knock down tariffs and things like that.
Well, no, he wants there to be tariffs on Chinese goods, and he doesn't like NAFTA.
He talks a big game, but I don't think.
So we really don't know what he thinks.
We really don't know what he'd do. That's the problem. Is he's kind of a. He says one thing and then a week later he says another thing. So it's we're not really sure what he'd do. So that's.
So you don't
that's
think the United Kingdom's going to have a recession because of this at all? You don't see that happening?
No, not at all.
Why?
Because the goods and services that Britain produces, people want them already. They're willing to pay for them. It's part of the
But they're going to sell less in this questionable period, though.
Maybe. I mean, you can't really say that. I said there may be some fractional adjustment. Like
but it doesn't take a lot. Like recessions are usually somewhat irrational, right? So all it takes is businesses not really knowing, so they cut production or they cut their workforce, and then things kind of ripple from there, right?
I don't think there'll be a recession. I mean, people, back in the 80s, people said Japan was going to take over the world. That didn't happen, just because people think something will happen.
A tiny island country is going to take over the world versus have a slight recession.
It's different.
Those are two different things, right?
But I just don't think. The thing is, the Europeans have all been trading amongst themselves for so many years now because of the EU that they're used to it. I don't think there'll be that many changes.
So you're a Bible, believer, right? You're a man of the Bible, correct?
Well, yeah. How does that come into the EU
Wow, you
discussion?
talk about my segues. Holy smokes.
Abrupt segue. hard right turn. Okay.
Right? I mean,
Continue.
you are a man of faith. You believe.
Sure.
I've seen pictures of you.
Okay.
And where were you?
I took a trip to Israel.
Yes. Okay. So the reason I asked that is, is there, people say there's something in the Bible that is basically, predicting the scorched earth, situation worldwide. And is this what's going on right now?
Oh, you're talking about Armageddon?
Yes.
Yeah, there's stuff in the Bible about the armies of Gog and Magog, and that's where the word Armageddon comes from, and the attack from the northeast into Israel, and the battle for the end of the world. Doesn't necessarily, some people are reading things into it that it's happening right now.
Is this the beginning of it?
You think the Brexit is the end of the world?
I didn't say I think it. I just said people are actually. And I've heard people talking about this, and I'm asking.
It's true.
Phil,
Some
because
people,
you're a man of faith. So
some people in conservative forums, they saying like, "Don't you see? It's all happening. Russia's moving into Syria. This is the direct definition of what's going to happen.
Yes,
this is the end times."
where
They
it's
say
come
that
from.
if we get too much snowfall or not enough snowfall.
Okay.
I'm not one of those believers that sees this as the end of time.
Okay.
So.
Well,
I think the whole point of the end of time is we're not going to see it coming. So
I believe we are out of time.
Oh man, what?
Yeah, it went really fast.
Another day.
Okay, so when we actually have intelligent things to look back upon on the Brexit, will you come back and talk to us
Sure.
about that? Awesome. 'Cause I have nothing. I just have conjecture like everybody else. So we are at Political Radar episode number 18 for show notes and links to all of the crazy things that Rhonda talks about. Go to politicalradar.com/18. And I also want to give out a quick shout out to our Political Radar community Facebook group. That is amazing. That's where we all talk about this stuff out of the show. That's where I feel like I know all these people before they even come on, and it's super awesome. So please join that group and look me up on Twitter, look me up on Facebook, look Rhonda up on Twitter, on Facebook. We are as out there as you can as can possibly be.
If you enjoyed this episode of Political Radar, please share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. Even better, submit a show review to iTunes or Stitcher. To listen to other episodes of Political Radar, please visit politicalradar.com/episodes. To support our podcast, please visit our sponsors who make this show possible. You can do this by visiting politicalradar.com/sponsors.
Thanks for listening to Political Radar. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. To stay up to date, visit politicalradar.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.
This episode of Political Radar is brought to you by ReleaseWire. ReleaseWire is a powerful media engagement service connecting businesses to journalists and bloggers. If you need to get the word out about your business, ReleaseWire is an effective and affordable way to reach journalists and bloggers who are truly interested. And we have a special offer for you today. Submit your first on-demand press release with ReleaseWire and save 25% by entering the discount code PoliticalRadar. That's Political Radar. ReleaseWire, from release to results.
Political Radar is a proud member of the Newsmakers Podcast Network, an ever-growing network of podcasts covering a wide range of topics. Check them out at npcn.tv.